pass the mic this way.
So the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed that I'm not actually Mickey Elson, but I work with him at ArtSec DAO, which is a digital art gallery in Hackney. I work there in their events coordination, and I also work for FryDAO, so that's why they've got me here. So I'm just going to let the panel go down, introduce themselves, where they work, and a little bit about what they do.
I hope you all hear me okay. My name's Rajiv. I'm based in London. I lead the growth team at Maker DAO. We provide the governance for the Maker protocol, which is the longest standing and I believe largest lending protocol out there. We're also behind the DAI stablecoin that some of you may know.
My name's Kam Dylan. I'm an international finance lawyer. I have been for about over 13 years. Recent years I've run an independent legal practice and I focused on the digital assets crypto space. I hold various roles, head of legal at Zebu, and general counsel at Clearpool.
Hi, I'm Rachmany. I'm excited to be here. And I've been working on DAO leadership and writing and consulting with DAOs for about 4 years, and we're going to be, right now we're announcing that we're working on something called Priceless DAO. And we're working on new infrastructure for the world, really, non-monetary infrastructure, and how do we create new, more just structures that preserve human dignity in the environment. So that's what Priceless is all about.
Hi everyone. So my name's Nick, and yeah, I build DAOs. I'm building a DAO platform called Factory DAO, which basically has the goal of creating a kind of modular DAO framework. Everything that you need to launch a DAO, launching tokens, explicitly around decentralized governance as well. So our big focus on us is NFT governance and building the sort of next iteration of DAO infrastructure.
Hey everyone. Happy to see so many people gathered here today. My name is Nikita Cikaluk. I'm an early advocate of the Web3 space, wearing different hats. I'm a brand consultant around NFTs and DAOs projects, as well as I'm writing for Forbes, as you can see from there, covering some of the trending topics in Web3 space, which we're going to discuss here today.
Amazing, thank you everyone. So I think maybe this is a question for Dr. Nick about building DAOs. Why build a DAO? What's the importance and how does that impact the future?
Yeah, this is why should you build a DAO? There was a paper this week that Vitalik wrote, which is, give a few different points. If you're doing something that requires censorship resistance, so a lot of the DeFi space is essentially handling lots of money without necessarily a particular legal form. It requires censorship resistance. People like Maker DAO, for example, they're issuing a token that is designed to be censorship resistant, and a DAO is a mechanism for making that possible. So it's a kind of decentralized structure. Everyone runs it. It like decentralizes the power around those things. So if you've got an organization that needs that, but one of the other things that Vitalik said, which I thought was quite interesting, is if you have plural governance. So you're trying to build an organization that's not top-down. So normal organizations use chains of authority, managerial structures where everyone tells everyone what to do. A DAO is a different paradigm, which is about bottom-up self-organization, total personal autonomy. If you're trying to create an organization where everyone is their own person and isn't being told what to do, and you want it to be bottom-up, and the goal is to decentralize power to everyone, then you do a DAO.
I think that covers it very, very well. And I think one of the things I find really interesting is the Forbes aspect from Nikita. How is Forbes and how are DAOs connected? Like, what have you been noticing and writing about? Like, what's the big interest?
Yeah, I do believe the biggest interest for me personally around DAOs is the fact that we're moving from one entity to many smaller participants. So it's not one manager or a core team who is actually deciding what are the next steps of this media company, this financial entity, but actually it's participants as employees, customers who for the first time in human history has the chance to decide what are the next steps of the brand and how would we want to see this space built for us, for people. Because at the end of the day, this Web3 space is still extremely early. It's going to take it tens of different adjustments before we see it in the final form. And it's important to start building it right from the beginning for people, for us, not just for the sake of having something.
For us, maybe Grace can do this on leadership, is how does leadership work in a DAO? If it's decentralized and maybe flatter than a normal hierarchy, how does leadership come into a DAO and how does that work?
I'm not going to answer that question because this is a panel on the future of work. And I think it's really important that we look at how far we've come with DAOs, what we've done for work, which these two gentlemen have spoken about really well. We've created flatter hierarchies, and that means we all need to take personal responsibilities. But we need to look at what the future of work is. And what DAOs have become is these really great funding mechanisms where people can be self-inspired to do something. And that's the future of work, except that we really need to be very clear about what work means in the future. And right now we're talking about like work, and we've devalued things like replanting our forests and recovering our watersheds. We're in the middle of a drought here. People are going to go hungry, and it's serious. The future of work is rebuilding the watersheds. This winter, we're all facing energy shortages. The future of work is going to all of our neighbors' houses and making sure at least one room can be heated with the budget that that neighbor has. The future of work is creating meaningful things that inspire us, that connect us to our neighbors, and to restore the planet. And if we don't start taking this technology, instead of just moving little digits of money around, it's great. We can move digits of money around to people who are rebuilding our agriculture, rebuilding our forests, and rebuilding human dignity. And that's the future of work. Because if it's not the future of work, there is no future. And so to me, it's really about taking leadership and saying, we can reorient this money in the Web3 space to what's meaningful to us as human beings and for our survival. So.
Yeah, they're brilliant. So maybe we take this opportunity, like what inspires, like if we go down the panel, what inspires you to work and what inspires you to change the future of work?
Well, with DAOs, I think it was touched upon. We're sort of trailing, we're blazing a new trail here. And I think we're in the first iteration. We've discovered some things that work. We're actually learning a lot of things that don't work. And as an industry, I think, we all fighting for the vision where we want to get to, which is this much better future. And at Maker, where we're dealing with, I guess, the boring bits of moving financial money around, something we do believe very strongly in is sponsoring clean money initiatives, exactly so that we tap the power of DeFi to make the world a better place. So we're investing in things like clean energy. But it's going to be a hell of a journey, and I would always emphasize just how early we are in that. What inspired me to sort of join the space is it's a privilege to be part of that journey and to have the opportunity to blaze this path. But it is tough. It does come with a lot of challenges, and I think when you're living it, and certainly at Maker we've had the opportunity to work with regulated institutions. We're definitely feeling that shift in terms of participants in the space. And we're learning, the model does need to adopt if we're going to carry on down this path. But yeah, it's the opportunity to be part of the journey that's the true inspiration.
So I think DAOs have got a huge potential to change kind of the landscape of the future of work, in that it does put responsibility into the hands of the participants and the individuals. And with that responsibility of being able to shape how something happens, how an organisation works, also do come risks and challenges. And I think from the legal standpoint, there's some work to be done, certainly under English law, to make sure that those participants are protected. And so I think there's a strong path to be trodden in terms of DAOs and how people work in the future. But I do think legal protections for those individuals will be a key part of that and the growth of it.
So maybe touching on that, the legality surrounding DAOs, like my limited knowledge about DAOs is that the legality is very tricky, and it's so new that it's quite a grey area. Is that right, or is there some precedence?
I definitely think it's a grey area where we are today, and I think one of the key tensions between a DAO, which inherently is meant to be decentralized and have no central authority, and legalization, which legal entity can serve a DAO and in order to give it protection. Because I think a lot in this space, DAOs are sort of inherently run outside of a legal structure or a legal wrapper, but I think that does expose the participants to potential liabilities. There's questions around who should hold assets, for example. How can, so I think there's a lot of work to be done around it, and I think it is a grey space. I can mainly speak to English law, but I think that's probably applicable to other jurisdictions as well. And there is definitely work happening around that at the moment to see whether, there can be some kind of legal entity that would honour decentralised governance whilst offering some kind of protection and legal recognition.
You're working with some...
Yeah, so this conversation about legality of DAOs is so the DAO legal nexus is going to be one of the biggest conversations in the space over the next 2 to 3 years. The reality of it is that DAOs are decentralized structures that might not necessarily marry up with any legal form that exists already. So new legal form may need to be created. There's potential regulatory attacks on DAOs. For example, if a nation state decides that anyone in a DAO is formed a general partnership and everyone is individually liable, and then start trying to prosecute individual members within a DAO, that would be, nation states have decided this is illegal now, which could happen, right? So we could be in a point where nation states just decide we want this to stop and directly start attacking DAO members in order to make, to send a message, right? Stop what you're doing, right? If that happens, then DAOs don't stop. They just get more illegal. So pseudonymous participants, no particular jurisdiction, you don't know who's inside them or what's happening. It all goes a bit underground and dark. Or nation states decide to say, we want you to do your Web3 DAO business in our nation. We want some revenue from it, so we're going to make it easy for you to pay your taxes. We're going to create those legal wrappers that allow part of your DAO to have legal form. So that's what it is. It's going to be, there's two different directions in which we will go. Probably both will exist simultaneously. Some DAO form require you to give your, so if you do a DAO Wyoming wrapper, they want to be able to shut you down at any point. And I'm not convinced you are still a DAO if you give that power to a nation state. Don't think you have any A in DAO if you do that. So this is the conversation. And I think it's very possible to see some very progressive nation states. I'm hoping the UK is going to be one of them. We say, right, set your DAOs up here. We're going to work collaboratively with DAO operators and infrastructure providers. That's the best of all worlds. So that's what we want, and working with people with legal expertise is basically where it's going to be at for the next 3 years, I think.
I'm quite a bit less optimistic than you, and that has to, we're in the biggest bear market I've ever been in. And we've seen governments say, oh, you know what? Tornado cash is illegal, and then arresting, and like as for arresting the person who programmed it, and he programmed it when it was still legal, right? Like something you did last year was legal, and now we're going to pass a law and put you in jail because when you were doing it, it was perfectly legal. And so I think the chance that nation states are going to give legitimacy to DAO is close to zero. There will be some rogue states and islands and et cetera. But at the end of the day, we're talking about, it's interesting, we're talking about being legal, but we're not talking about the legitimacy of our governments and the legitimacy of these laws. I mean, KYC, what happened to privacy and innocent until proven guilty? Why am I guilty of money laundering just by having a bank account? Why do I have to give the government the right to look at every transaction that I make? When did that become legitimate? Isn't that what this industry is about? And we're just bending the knee. We're watching protocols bend the knee. And the reason we did it is because none of us own our own cloud servers. None of us own our own electricity generators. None of us own our own food. And that's the biggest mistake we've made as an industry. And that's really what I've been working on, is like, you know, the priceless DAO is about what's priceless in life. Having our own freedoms and having our ability to take care of one another and not bending the knee every time the government changes the regulations. I've been in this industry. I've watched lawyers sit down with my clients and say, if you do this, it passes the Howey test, no, 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 no. 18 months pass and the regulators are knocking on their door. And then the lawyers, no offense, make another $100,000 getting them out of the hole. These governments don't have legitimacy to take my privacy away from me. And I don't think that we should just keep compromising with them. That's why Bitcoin and Ethereum keep going down, because every time we compromise, we have less legitimacy as an industry.
Actually, I really agree. I just wanted to add that I actually really agree with what Rajiv and Nick just mentioned about us testing the water of DAOs. I had the privilege to share the stage at eSocial a couple of weeks ago with another representative of Maker DAO, with Nadia Alvarez. And Maker DAO is the oldest, the biggest DAO there. And the way how she approached it as a head of growth, actually, is that it's a test. Like, we are in this market where we're just testing things out. If it works, perfectly fine. If it doesn't work, we're gonna adjust, we're gonna add something, but it's a part of the journey to fail. So answering the question, what will the end framework, the end result, the end structure coming from the government side, coming from the DAO side itself, perhaps we cannot answer it yet. We can come up with some ideal case scenarios for all of us coming from different backgrounds. It most probably will be a different story, but it's still too early to say what it's going to look in 10 years from now. And I do believe that's also the beauty of the space, us testing out it now with all these different tools, realizing what are the needs, the wants of general users. So yeah.
I mean, I think what the industry is really craving for is clarity. You know, like if we, everything, the problem is right now, everything is subject to interpretation. So depending on who you speak to, you can interpret differently what's correct and what's not correct. I mean, I can tell you the appetite we're seeing from institutions and, you know, big institutions who want to get involved in DeFi is huge, but they're asking the same questions. Like, we need clarity to understand what can we do and what can we not do. And, you know, we all want to come together to collectively get to this better place. And I think as an industry, we're just going to keep testing those boundaries in a responsible manner and try to define correct frameworks that we can work within.
How do we do that? Like, there's a lot of talk about legality, especially around assets, and Grace has made some excellent points about just humanity in general, but how do we as individuals make that change or impact or influence it in any way?
Well, we have to stop operating as individuals. It's not natural, it's not normal. I mean, I've had this experience, about half of you have had, where I had this thing that was me, and then it became another person, and it was like literally in me, and then it was like not, and it was like a totally separate person. And so that experience makes you realize that we are not individuals. And we need to start coming back to community. We're looking at communities that are based on actually owning the land, growing on the land, or hosting the web servers on the land, or the solar panels on the land, so that there's an integration between the community you belong to, the meaningful work, like we talked about, and being part of this DAO that operates with other DAOs like it, so that people are not operating as individuals, because united we stand, divided we fall. And then that's one of the mistakes of the monetary system, is like, if I've got enough money, I can hire a mover, I can hire a babysitter, I can put granny in a old folks home. If we stop operating as individuals and we start operating as groups and communities and holding each other's hand, it won't be so scary and lonely. And, you know, freedom isn't free. It comes at a cost, and we need to have each other's backs, because some of us are already paying the price. Some of us already have gone to jail. And we need to start operating as a community and not as an individual, and find projects that you believe in, support people you believe in, and don't be so concerned about the number in your bank account. Be concerned about where your food supply is coming from, where your electricity is coming from, and who you can trust.
So, do we see maybe offices and companies in the future becoming DAOs? How will it affect not like the Web 2 world now? Will you go into an office and all of you are part of a DAO? Will it affect how you actually day-to-day work, or will it be how you work as a community within that office, do you think? That's an open question to anyone.
I think my background's in governance, right? And decentralized governance is not a new thing. So I'm sort of building decentralized organizational structures. They've been around for a long time. There's a long legacy for these things. But what DAOs do is allow that to go onto the open internet. So it allows you to do decentralized organization at scale. And I think there'll be DAOs that there's no reason why they can't scale to millions of people. They can laterally scale in ways that brick and mortar institutions can't. They can be governed in the way that centralized hierarchies don't scale. They just have to make those central actors more powerful. So a lot of companies will have, if they want to do it, will have to get used to this idea of giving power away to people and letting them be autonomous and not necessarily knowing the outcome. Some progressive places might experiment with that. I don't think we'll see large centralized companies just turn into DAOs all of a sudden. I do think we'll see companies exploring DAO components for international workers, and there's a lot of people who don't want to trade their time for a contractual obligation to turn up 9 to 5 for 3 years. There's a lot of talent lying around who just want to be autonomous individuals who'll turn up and do some casual work, pick up some money and disappear, maybe not even, no contracts, no legal form, just come and do some work. And I think that's an incredibly large talent pool. So I think we'll see companies doing that because it makes financial sense for them to do so. So yes, when all of that will happen, when it makes sense. The kind of institutional narrative, a lot of the point of this is to do it without institutions. So I kind of get a bit of like institutional adoption. I'm like, I don't care about institutional adoption. We don't want institutional adoption. The point is to build extra institutional governance and extra, like doing things in a radically new way and rebuild the way governance is done and do organizations in a different way. So yeah, let's do it differently and go in a different direction. If people want to do it, then good for them, but it's up to them.
I would envision things like project-based DAOs that do a project, people join, and then the DAO dies off. Yeah. This whole idea of a company living forever and growing doesn't make sense. Like, oh, let's build the bridge, build the DAO, and then the bridge is built. We all go off our separate ways. I don't think we need corporate structures to build bridges, or I can envision this a different way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's an interesting point that you mentioned there, Nick, around kind of individuals doing casual work and that being a massive talent pool. And you might remember that so there was this time period where 0-hour contracts became massive, and actually it was doing a disservice to that talent pool. Yes. And I think what DAOs can do is actually shift that narrative to put a little bit more of the power in the hands of that talent pool to say, I can come to the table and do this, and actually I get something in return for it.
I see the 1 million people in this country on 0 hours contracts as being the target audience for DAOs in the next few years. I think we'll have over 1 million people in this country working for a DAO, and that's whether the government have decided they want to enable that or not, right? And it will essentially be up to those people if they pay tax or not. Now, they have to, right? But will they know who they are, and do they know how to, is the next sort. So the adoption is going to happen to those people, and casual work online, and that being more plentiful. So we talked about, like, are people going to be able to keep the lights on this winter? If you could go to a DAO and earn a few $100 to making memes for some internet culture organization, then, and that allows you to keep the lights on in this country, then, that's where we get the next wave of adoption, is providing work opportunities for millions of people all over the world.
I think one paradigm shift, I'm already seeing and living in the DAO landscape, and it actually surprised me is how many people who work for DAOs, they don't do so exclusively. It's not like a work contract where you're working for a company. You can contribute to multiple DAOs. And actually, many people in the industry do just that. So, which is already a huge paradigm shift, right? You're not restricting yourself to, I work for a single employer. You contribute for a cause that you're either a specialist in or strongly believe in, and you provide that as a service to multiple DAOs. And yeah.
DAO's a side gig machine. Like, everyone will have a side gig in a DAO soon.
Will DAOs impact, let's say we are doing side gigs and working in multiple DAOs, will it be, instead of maybe you're an executive so you get paid way more, do you think there's a way for DAOs to do it on like input and merit base? Is there a current way of doing that?
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm really concerned about this idea of merit-based and also this idea of being a talent pool. I don't like being called a talent pool. I don't think any of you like being called a resource or a talent pool or being incentivized. Like, I'm not a tool that something is supposed to manipulate. And I worry a lot about equality. I mean, I think about if you're a DAO and you're doing gig work and you've got to get your salary approved every 3 months by your peers, like how much politics is involved in that? And the proposals are in English or whatever, and what if you're some mother in Malaysia who's pregnant for the third time in 5 years, and you have to ask for your maternity leave from your peers all over the world in the English language and explain about your culture is like, that's a blessing to the earth to have a third child, and they're like, why are you taking maternity leave? You should be making memes. And I don't know what to say.
Whether, maybe I'm being too optimistic, but whether DAOs can be a vehicle for people to choose when and how and if they want to make a contribution and then to be rewarded for it, rather than the traditional system that we've seen historically, which is this 9 to 5, you're tied into this, and actually, you're, regardless of what's going on for you personally and your other priorities, actually, this is what you need to do all of the time. And I think it's nice to have, there's like a flexibility, I think, that comes with DAOs that perhaps could serve different communities.
But what I'm pointing at is that having a child and raising them is a contribution. And nobody should have to vote on whether you should be rewarded for that behavior.
I really love what Grace just mentioned, the word equality. For me personally, DAOs is all about equality. It's about contributing not just from financial standpoint, but also team culture development. Let's put it like this. Right now, all these traditional businesses, they have the hierarchy system. You have tens of managers above you to whom you need to report. So basically, you being at some entry level, let's say the first couple of years, you have almost no decision-making power. I'm not saying that all the big brands need to adjust and start using DAOs later on. I cannot even see it, but let's start with some smaller startups, scale-ups, who are looking for faster, most innovative ways to make those right decisions, raise money, and in this way give this equal voting right, equal decision-making power to all participants, regardless whether you're the founder of the brand or you're just an intern, a creative marketing director who entered a couple of months ago, but you have something to add. And you don't need to wait weeks in this queue of management decisions to actually get some kind of feedback coming back and forth. You can make the decision right now. And that's how I see the equality coming to smaller entities and then potentially growing to bigger companies. Because right now we need some use cases. Let's be honest, there is not that many successful DAOs. There's a lot of projects who are stating that they're DAOs. And instead of this 3 letters DAO in their names, there is nothing around, about DAOs into them. So we need some use cases of different team structures, of different company sizes to actually show these big brands, thousands of people working them, how it works. Because right now they're scared. They're just simply scared of the whole blockchain, of the whole Web3 technology ecosystem. And DAOs is just one of these directions which they have no idea what the heck it is.
But that concept of equality, can it really be achieved? And if so, is that to the extent that smart contracts are appropriately coded? And then are you shifting the power and responsibility to developers and the people that employ those developers or engage those developers? So I think there are a few more questions to be answered around whether that idea of quality can be truly achieved.
It's actually a kind of technical problem. So, like, the way most DAO governance works at the moment is the richest people run everything because it's one token, one vote. So the next sort of era of this, so we've built DAOs where everyone's got one NFT each and everyone has the same voting power. So you can build perfectly egalitarian governance structures in a DAO. We've done a few of them. But then you can do reputation-based systems. So to answer your point, Matt, around meritocratic governance, you can do it. So the next sort of era is non-financial governance power in DAOs, which allows you to, like, it's a blank slate to build any governance paradigm that you can imagine, weighting people for their knowledge in certain disciplines, their history of participation over time. All of that is like possible now. So I think we're going to see genuinely exciting new organizational structures emerge over the next year or so.
Yeah, the next year, I mean, we got Zebu 23 to look forward to. But I think this has been amazing. I've learned so much. It's interesting being by far the stupidest on the panel. But I think maybe if we go down and just say what we're looking forward to in the next iteration of DAOs, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about the decision making. And look, it comes with pros and cons, right? When you spread out that decision making capability, make it more equalitarian, for lack of a better word. I mean, it can come with a high cost. And I think there's a lot to innovate here. So actually at Maker, as we've hit a certain scale, we've learned some things that work and some things that don't work. And there's a lot of discussion in our community now about a new structure that actually almost splits out into specialist DAOs. And the idea is just to facilitate the decision making. So yeah, I mean, to me, I really look forward to carrying on the innovation that we're seeing in the industry, both from a governance perspective, but also from the underlying tech.
And Kam, in like a short few words, what are you looking forward to most?
I'm looking forward to, I think DAOs have the potential to create a truly democratic way of working, and that excites me.
Zebu, DAO when? And Grace?
I think somebody asked me about Web3 adoption, and I said, when nobody tells me they can't pay their rent in crypto, then we'll know we made it. So I'm really looking forward to the land-based DAOs that are coming up, including our own, but there's a lot of people creating communities and physical land-based DAOs, creating their own electricity. So us as an industry actually owning an ecosystem that can support us.
I'm looking forward to there being 1,000 DAOs a day. So there's going to be a point where anyone can launch one instantly in 5 minutes with any amount of people, whether it's 5 people or 5,000, and you can do it online without talking to anyone. And there's 1,000 people doing it a day, maybe more. There'll be the point where this takes off is going to be incredible. I'm looking forward to that.
Yep, that's basically what we just meant is Vic's web page that we have right now for web page development. That's basically the top point of adoption for Web2 world. For us, being able to create this different frameworks of DAOs in a matter of minutes, that is the future. And I'm extremely fascinated about the use of NFTs into it. Holding NFTs as a long-term holder from consumer standpoint or as a reward system for employees based on their contribution, something that we discussed before, and having the voting power based on the involvement into the system.
Amazing. Thank you all of you for joining us. Thank you for Zebu for having us, and thank you for listening, guys. Hope you enjoy Zebu.